Welcome to Frogman Friday. I'm Ryan Birdman Parrott. Today, our badass guest is Eli Crane. He served 13 years as a U.S. Navy SEAL, exiting service as a petty officer first class. He founded Bottle Breacher in 2013 in San Diego, California, and has now jumped into politics with Eli Crane for Congress. You can follow Eli on social media, handles to follow the show. To learn more about Bottle Breacher, go check out bottlebreacher.com. And for his political run, go check out elifораrizona.com. Brother, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So being a frogman, getting out of the service, some guys have tough times, some guys jump right into business. What inspired you to become a CEO of a company and found Bottle Breacher?
I think it was really two things. One, I caught the entrepreneurial bug while I was still in the military, and I just loved the challenge and the upside of it. But if I'm being honest, a big part of it was fear as well. I think fear can be a very good motivator. And, the fear of not being able to provide for my family, my wife and two daughters, was something that definitely drove me, into this next chapter of my life.
That's awesome, brother. And it's, everybody, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are going to be listening to this that have seen you on Shark Tank and have seen the growth of Bottle Breacher. And I can't tell you, every team guys see, every non-team guys see, they all have Bottle Breachers at their house. I have some for my best men for my wedding. So it's been a pretty cool idea. You're the only one in the country who can get bullets at this time. Pretty funny. So everybody that you're listening, go check out bottlebreacher.com and go get your gifts there. They are incredible, cool gifts for anything from a bachelor party to just a really cool knick-knack to open your beers or do anything you need. So go check out bottlebreacher.com. Thing I want to really impress upon right now is one thing that you haven't said, and I love to talk about, is that you're a strong believer in Christ our Lord. And that's a really, really important thing to me, my family, and to a lot of people that I know. So tell us about your walk with the Lord. Has it been something like strong with you for your entire life, or is it something you came to in military? Just give us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I was saved when I was 7 years old. I was pretty fortunate, to grow up in a church, but as I think a lot of young men and women do is, if they grow up in that type of environment, sometimes you go off and you want to test the waters and find your own way. And, I definitely, have had some struggles, in my walk of faith, especially once my family was destroyed in high school. My parents, had a pretty nasty divorce, and I became a little wayward. And then, as I got into the service and, started doing some pretty, dangerous things and, experiencing life for myself, I started coming back to God and studying more. And, one of the biggest inflection points for me in my walk was in 2016. I went to a Christian men's retreat. It's called Wild at Heart, and is put on by the guy, John Eldridge, that writes the book Wild at Heart and many, many other books. And it just changed my world, man. And so it was interesting because, during that time I was, and I still am the CEO of Bottle Breacher. And I was, I had this goal of growing the biggest, baddest, better known business in the world, or in the country at least. And, Forbes magazine said we were number 13 in the country and well on our way. And it just changed my heart. It changed my focus, and it made me want to fight against evil, fight for the family, fight for men and their hearts. Cause I know, the thief has come to steal, kill, and destroy. And, I definitely seen that attempt in my own life and with my own family. And it made me want to fight for, my brothers. And it was interesting. I actually started putting in my resume with ministries that I was attracted to, and there were men's ministries, and I thought that's where God was calling me. And as often happens, it took as for right now, it's taking a much different turn. But that's the most important thing in the world to me, is my faith, because it's like I know that this earth that we live on, and I know that this story that we live in is not about me. It never has been. It never will be about me. And I like to point I like to point other people to the real hero of the story, and towards things that are eternal.
Well, thank you for sharing that, brother. And this leads us right into what you're doing now, because, you serve, then you get out and you found a company and you're still serving. You have God, and you're going to now serve the United States of America, and you're stepping up once again. Politics. This is something that most team guys that I know, that's the last thing we want to do.
Right.
And here you are, full send in it. So when did you decide that you're going to throw your hat in, and tell us about this journey?
Yeah. Well, I still find myself in that camp where, especially now, as I get into it and I kind of see just, I dip my toe into this new battlefield, and, I'm meeting friend and foe, and some people that might be both, and it's never been something that I wanted to do, but because I love this country, and because I love my children, and I love Americans, and I love freedom, and I love opportunity. And, I can't stand tyranny. I realize that this country's in a lot of trouble, and I've been speaking about it for a long time. And, recently I've been given the opportunity to do something about it. Some people that do this type of stuff, on a daily basis for a living and are very good at it, have, reached out to me earlier in the year. And yeah, it was actually it was like in a time of transition for me and my wife. We had just decided to sell our home, and, become more flexible for whatever God had for us. And as I was putting in my resume with ministries and thinking that that's where God was calling me, and some of these folks, I think, had heard some of the things that I'd said, and been following us, and reached out and said, "Hey, we'd like to help you make a difference." And so, that's, Jen and I prayed about it a lot, and we talked to a lot of our friends and family about it. And, as I've gotten older, I've gotten a lot better at not just jumping at things that, seem exciting or fascinating to me. And I want to make sure that I'm not pursuing pursuing the wrong things, and want to always try and make sure that I'm walking in God's favor. And so we decided, hey, we're gonna give this a shot. And so far I feel it. I feel His hand on this, and I feel a blessing. That, to me, that doesn't mean that I'm gonna ever become a congressman. And honestly, I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is sitting on the sidelines and complaining about it, knowing that I could have tried to do something about it. And so, yeah, I think that, when you walk with God, and you really put yourself out there, I think it can be exciting and scary at the same time. And I think one of the reasons why things don't, for believers out there that, are doing the same thing and walking with God, I think a lot of the times our timetable isn't God's table. Our plans aren't God's plans. And a lot of time, if everything went according to our earthly and human plans, we wouldn't have any need for God. I mean, we'd be like, oh, I got it, God. You just stay up there and do your thing, and I'll kind of do my thing down here. And it's kind of cool in a way, because you have to walk in faith. And, to me, it reminds me of, Peter getting out of the boat and walking towards Christ. And as long as he kept his focus on Christ, he was good to go. He's walking on water. And the moment he took his eyes off Christ and started looking at the wind and the waves, he started to sink. And I find myself, humbly often gazing over at the wind and the waves and being like, oh, that's scary. That's not looking good. God, am I still walking in your favor? And so, it's been really interesting. And I don't believe that that a government will ever create this, utopia here on earth. As a matter of fact, I think, as a conservative, I want less government. I want more freedom. But I do think that it is a realm that Christians should engage in, and people of faith should engage in, because I know that the enemy's most certainly engaged in this world. And if there's no opposition, we all know where that leads. It often leads to tyranny. It leads to oppression. And, one of my favorite sayings and one of the tattoos I have on my arm is evil triumphs when good men do nothing. And so I want to be clear about that. I don't, I don't, even if I got to Congress, nobody's electing me king, right? I can't just, you see politicians and they tell you, oh, I'm going to go do this, that. To me, I see myself as, I see myself as just a servant and wanting to go serve and wanting to go make sure that I'm one vote or I'm one voice in that room, that important room, trying to remind my colleagues and other candidates and politicians why we're there, who we're there to serve. And, ideally I'd like to become a congressman so that I can try to be part of affecting, change. And then I'd like to come home and I'd like to, be with my family. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting new chapter for us, but I feel like many of the things that God has called me to do have prepared me for this new chapter.
It's a brilliant. We're super glad you're doing it, brother. And you're making major waves too, which is wonderful because, I'm in Texas, you're in Arizona. And so for us to hear your name on the news and that, it means you're getting out there and speaking the truth. What are some of the big things that you're running on? Like, what are some of the big focal points of your run here?
Yeah, absolutely. What number one for me is actually, and I'll admit it's controversial. And I wish it wasn't the case, but election integrity is number one for me. I believe that if we don't tighten up our elections, which I personally believe have been intentionally loosened to create the opportunity for fraud, I believe we're going to have a really tough time keeping a free and opportunistic country and society. And it goes right back. All of this to me has spiritual undertones. I talk about evil. Evil does not want free and fair. Evil wants tyranny. Evil wants complete and total control and oppression. And I mean, when you look at the way that Christ walked the earth, when you read the Gospels, he didn't make anybody follow him. He didn't make anybody. He gave us all free will. And that's one of the beautiful things in my mind. And when I read our Constitution and our Bill of Rights, that we have freedom here. We have freedom to, worship who we want to worship. We have freedom to choose the career path we want to choose. We have the freedom to build wealth if we want. We have the freedom to focus on a lot of things and even use our means, our economic means the way that we so choose in for most parts. And so, I'm definitely big on election integrity. I think that that's something that a lot of people are sleeping on. And I think it's unfortunate. And at the very least, I think that, that's one of those things where I think we should always work to improve, everything in our government. And, the fact that our elections are kind of always overlooked, or a lot of people act like, oh, that stuff can never happen here. I have friends that worked in 3-letter agencies whose job was to go around the world and to mess with other people's elections. It's a fact of life. And it just really blows my mind that people think that, our elections are so transparent and fair and free. And then when we, the people, say, okay, prove it to me. I want to see it. I want to see a full forensic audit. Those same people that said that these elections are free and transparent and open and honest, they call you a kook or a conspiracy theorist, and say, well, why do you want to see that? I mean, there's nothing to see here. And it just doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way in business. It doesn't work in elections. And I want to see more transparency in our elections. I want the people of this country to feel like their votes still, even though we live in a republic, a democratic republic, I want us all to know that our votes matter and count, and that nobody's vote counts more or less than ours. And so that's a big deal for me. The border is a big deal for me. I think every country should be able to have its own sovereignty. I know what flows over that southern border. I have a lot of friends in the Border Patrol who brief me constantly on what's going on, from funding and supporting the cartels, because that's everything, every person, every item, every drug that comes across that border, the cartel gets a cut of it. And then we go into the human trafficking. I think it's unbelievable and just so disappointing and disgusting that the United States of America is the biggest consumer of sex trafficking in the world. A lot of people don't know that. I have several friends that work in that industry as well, on the nonprofit side and on the government side. And a lot of people don't know that. It's a dirty little secret here. Most of us don't even want to think about it, because if you actually start really thinking about it and what the implications are and what the reality of that is, and how many children are being raped every single day, how many adults are in the same boat every single day, and they're being subjugated to that lifestyle. It's just disgusting to me. And I want to make sure that, that stuff's not coming into our country. I want to make sure that gangs aren't coming into our country. You and I were SEALs. We've dealt with terrorism. We know that there are people all around this world that would love nothing more than to walk into a crowded mall in Houston or Dallas or even Phoenix and, kill every infidel that they could. And I don't like that. You don't like that, but that's a reality. Ideals are peaceful, history is violent, and so is reality. And we need to make sure that we have our sovereignty. We need to make sure we know who comes in, who goes out of this country. I mean, that's security 101. And the fact that we have tens of thousands of people just streaming over this border every single month, actually hundreds of thousands every single month. Especially during a pandemic, it makes no sense. While we have Border Patrol agents that are being fired for not taking vaccines, and people coming into our country during a pandemic that aren't forced to take vaccines and then are relocated, sometimes in the dark of night, to all corners of this country. That doesn't make any sense, and it shouldn't be allowed to continue. So those are a couple of things right there. And then, our national debt, that's a huge issue to me. I mean, we're $30 trillion in debt. I think over $30 trillion in debt. Right now, Congress had, Nancy Pelosi is trying to pass a $3.5 trillion, bill up on Capitol Hill right now. And it's just like, there's no responsibility at all. There's no fiscal responsibility at all. And as a businessman who doesn't get a print money, who has to spend what we make, and has to make plans for the future, and has to have a budget, I think it's so irresponsible, and I think it weakens us in so many different ways. So those are just a few of the things that I'm running on. But honestly, to me, the bigger thing than just as we sit here and talk policy and some of the policies that are important to me, what I've noticed as I watch the internal collapse of the United States is that the biggest thing we lack isn't policy gurus. It's not people that have enough experience. They know how the system in Washington works. It's actually, to me, it's a couple of things. It's courage and character. We're lacking those two things more than anything, because too many people get into this world and they want to, because we're all human beings, we're all sinners, right? We've been talking about our faith, and that's what the scriptures teach us. They don't teach us that we're all great. We're all good dudes. We're all great human beings. It teaches us that we're all sinners, and that's why we need a savior, right? But when you look at that, most of us are all about self-promotion constantly, and life is about us. We'd rather take than give, and I think that we need more men and women who have character and who have courage, who aren't trying to make public office about themselves, who are willing to be a servant, and who are willing to also take the sling, are strong enough mentally to take the slings and arrows that will come if you say the things that I'm saying. If you talk about your faith, if you talk about conservative values, if you oppose cultural Marxism and critical race theory, and trying to teach our kids to look at everything through a lens of race. I mean, it's so disgusting to me to see what's going on in our schools. And for those of you out there, your listeners out there, I would challenge you to go watch, Google Yuri Bezmenov if you haven't already. He was a Russian KGB agent who defected to the United States. And he goes through and talks about chapter and verse what the KGB was spending their money on. And it wasn't espionage. It wasn't the fancy James Bond stuff. It was actually ideological subversion in our schools, academia, and entertainment. And when you look at the ramifications and what's going on now in academia, in our Ivy League schools, and even our just Division I universities, and even our high schools and grade schools, what these kids are being taught, it's disgusting. And it doesn't unite us at all. It divides us. And it separates us all into little categories based on race and our sexuality and where we were born and everything you can think of. And it really breaks my heart, because that is not, to me, it's not productive. It's not righteous. It's evil. I think it's one of the many things that's really bad for this country. And so it's another issue that if I get the opportunity and the chance to do something about it, I absolutely will.
Well, I'll tell you what, brother, it's just, I've listened to a lot of guys who have been running for politics, running for either Senate or Congress over the last 10 years since being out. And I always listen to their views, but you can't go wrong when you have somebody who truly is a believer and has Christ in their heart. Plus, on top of that, you are a war fighter who is given for this country. So, I mean, you're awesome, man. I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate your continual battle to support and uplift America. And it's been awesome to see you get out too, because, for a lot of guys who get out like me, we all get into this serial entrepreneur world and not all of us succeed to the level you have. And so it's cool. I thrive off of other people's energy. So I see you crushing it then, just like in the teams, right? I'm going to try in a good way to beat you. And yeah, I've got a long way to go for that, but it's,
well, I know what you're saying. And I welcome it. And there's a lot of guys that have beat me, and it's never been about me. It never will be about me. And I love to see it as well. I thrive off it. I love to support, and I don't care if you're in the SEAL teams, you're a Ranger. I don't care if you were a grunt in the Marine Corps. I love to see veterans, I love to see people plain and simple succeed, especially when they were underdogs. I love the underdog story. It's like, it's awesome to see people succeed, especially, when you believe that they're good people and they're selfless. So I appreciate that, man. And I think it's great what you're doing. And thanks for having me on.
Yeah, brother. Well, we're going to put all your information at the end of this. So you can go check out Eli, and you go to his website, elifораrizona.com. Go check him out, support him at bottlebreacher.com. Give him some love. Let's get him elected to Congress, and let's keep America great. Appreciate your time, brother.
Thank you, Bram. Appreciate it, man.
You bet.